I'm Tom Baker. I'm a strategy director in BT, and my role is to look across cities, is to look across local government, the NHS, and also the smart cities agenda. And I think we're probably going to hear today a whole raft of different takes and views on what smart cities is or isn't. And if you speak to people out there in the industry, a lot of them are a bit sort of wizened, I guess, a little apprehensive about the continued use of this term smart cities, because what it's engendered is a lot of pilot activity. It's engendered a lot of investment from government. It's engendered a lot of investment from tech companies looking for a market, looking for a mechanism by which they can sell their products and their technologies. And I think to get to the heart of what is a smart city, we have to talk about this element of sustainability. We have to talk about the concept of marketplaces. We have to talk about the integration of city services. That's fundamental. We do a lot of work with Innovate UK, so we're part of City Verve up in Manchester, which is a big initiative looking at an IoT demonstrator across the city. We do work in Milton Keynes with the Open University, again, where we've rolled out low power radio networks, etc., etc. We also do some work in Bradford where we're looking at connected health. But out of all of these initiatives, we're coming to the conclusion that actually for these things to propagate, there needs to be a market for services, and we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about why we think there's some really very interesting assets here in Wales. So we know that there is a huge amount going on in terms of the world of technology. We know there's billions of connected devices going out there. We know there's sensors. We know the cost of those sensors is dropping, and I'm sure you probably know some of these things. But also what we need to do, I think, especially in these changing times, is to really think about the context of technological change with respect to how we operate and deliver city services into the future. And sustainability must absolutely be at the heart of that thinking. New business models must be at the heart of that thinking. But we must be clear on thinking about where we're starting from a city perspective. And one of the reasons I don't think the sort of smart cities agenda has really taken hold is because of the siloed nature of public services, because of the siloed nature of benefits cases. If you're investing on behalf of a city, if you're investing on behalf of a health and social care system, who sees the benefit of less people going into A&E? Is it the NHS? Is it social services? Is it the private sector? You know, the list goes on. So this concept of being able to aggregate and integrate data, to be able to redefine care pathways, built around the needs of citizens, is really at the sort of heart of our vision of what a smarter city is. So we need to move away from the point that we are today, that we have these silo systems, and we need to think about integration. And we need to think about that from a whole raft of different angles. There's a need to aggregate information, and of course that engenders then a huge debate about trust and consent and the use of data in a primary context, in a secondary context. But it also, starts the debate about what are the underpinning infrastructures that a city needs to be sustainable into the future. And we think there's some really, really very valuable assets here in Wales, and my colleague Chris will talk about the PSBA in just a moment. But we need to move to a position where cities have underpinning infrastructure that allows them to come together, to work around what is really important for organisations, for people, for cities, for public services. And to a certain extent, that relies on aggregating networks and information. So at the heart of the Smart Cities agenda for us is public sector transformation. If you think about city budgets, where does the money go in cities? Well, ultimately, we think the major drain is pretty obviously health and social care. So how do we create healthier cities? How do we drive better well-being for people? How do we think about that in the context of what's here in Wales in terms of its unique elements around what we've just heard about? So we need to think about, why transformation matters, why it matters in the context of the public sector. So I'm going to hand over to Chris for a couple of minutes, who's going to tell you about some unique assets that are here in Wales. So without further ado, Chris, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Chris Greenwood. I'm a PSBA Business Director. Now, it would be foolish of me to just walk straight into this presentation and assume that everyone knows what PSBA is. So if you don't mind, I'll take a I'll take 30 seconds describing what PSBA, the current situation, where we come from, and then we'll go into the future, the transformation of this network. PSBA stands for Public Sector Broadband Aggregation. It's a public sector network. Essentially, we've connected together 110 public sector organisations across 4,800 sites. It was a brainchild of Welsh Government and some organisations back in 2006, 2007, when they brought together that thinking, and under the mantra of buying once for Wales, they went out to tender. Watching from afar, I always thought that PSBA was purely a cost-saving exercise. And it wasn't until about 4 or 5 years ago where I was invited to a meeting in South Wales. I walked into the meeting, there were 5 local councils, and the local health board sat around the table, talking around how they deliver various levels of care, so primary care, secondary care, social care, to the users of those care packages within the Swansea area. And I quickly realised that actually the conversation was not about network. Every conversation I'd had until that date was always about network, about how we make it work, how we stitch together the networks to underpin that work. There was no conversation around network. It was purely around the experience of that user, how they could bring together the data from those various organisations and deliver a better, quicker experience to that care user. And not once, again, was the network mentioned. It was always around, we have to do this, we have the capability to do this. And I think that's, for me, that quickly dawned on me, that's what the PSBA has achieved since 2007. It's removed network as the barrier. Everyone is connected, and what people have started thinking about is innovative ways of building up from that. What can we deliver now that as a public sector we're all talking to each other? So that's the history. I mean, and in 2017, that was sort of 5 years ago now, and that was the absolute nirvana. I still think it is today. The sharing of data, where public sector organisations have quick and easy access to the data that they require to make informed decisions when they're in front of that user. Although what I've seen in the last 5 years is it's changed. I would say that was pretty much, it wasn't an exception. No doubt there were pockets of good work happening. It's become more of the norm now. Those norms, those conversations around collaboration are happening on a day-to-day basis. And Wales have achieved this, and it is a remarkable achievement in the time frames and to get those people, to everyone on this network. And this is unique. It really is unique. And I think the network has enabled those innovative conversations to happen. So I've got, I'll press the right button. Safer, smarter, working together, and way over 4,000 sites. And we still have some way to go. We have pretty much every local health board, the 22 local councils, blue light service, fire service, ambulance, small organisations like Brecon National Park, Welsh Government themselves, 110. But there are areas that we are yet to expand into. We think the model works. We think the network will create this value. It would be beneficial to be part of the PSBA, and we're working very hard to make that happen. BT took over this contract in 2014. We have it for a 7-year period. It's a 7-year partnership with Welsh Government. I have a case study to cover off at the end, but I'll just quite briefly talk about sort of the current situation. From a PSBA perspective, we're in a period of transformation as a public sector. You're having to change the way that you're working, you're interacting with your citizen on a day-to-day basis. And what we need to make sure is that the network is constantly ahead of where you need to be. That you, like I had that experience 5 years ago, the network and the capability of the network is a given. The security of the network is a given. And that means that we need to transform. We need to make sure that there is always enough for you to transform. So we're embracing new technologies. You may all be aware of the huge investment made by Welsh Government in partnership with BT into Superfast in Wales. The programme is not finished yet, 12 months to go, but it has made Superfast and connectivity available to many more premises in Wales, many more people in Wales. And we're using that within our network. You know, the two marry together perfectly with the availability of those services. Organisations themselves are having to transform. we are engaged in some very exciting conversations with those organisations around what they need to do going forward. You know, for example, the multi-agency incident transfer service, I think I might have that the last word wrong, is a blue light function that enables the right message to get to all the blue light services in an instant with the detail that they need to make those critical decisions when they go into an incident site. And that is transferred and communicated across the PSBA network. So we've gone from a world of fax to GSM to now something happening 0.3 of a millisecond over the PSBA network. So that's one of the things that we're working on. As we're developing the network, we are developing new services in conjunction with those organisations. There is no one in BT cooking up ideas in our industrial park, our research and development, going, wouldn't this be great on the PSBA? All of the new services we're talking about developing and bringing to PSBA organisations in 2017 have been developed and tested and trialled in conjunction with organisations. Some of those hopefully will play into the themes of today. You know, our secure roaming solution will allow public sector workers to work from any public sector site securely, quickly, as if they were in their own environment. That will impact travel time, productivity, efficiency, and actually the well-being of that member of staff themselves. We're also looking at other areas about extending our network into Microsoft, which is now based down in Newport. And there are many other exciting things that we're doing. And if you don't mind, I'd like to now show you the video on how Cardiff and Vale Health Board are using the PSBA network in their today environment and how it impacts the way that they operate their organisation.
The move to digital imaging has resulted in what I call the Doctor Who effect. So that's the removal of geographical and time boundaries. So whereas in the past we'd had to produce a hard copy image, and now everything is available anytime, any place, anywhere. That means that we have no lost images. It means that any clinician who has access to the system, has been adequately trained, can access that image simultaneously. They can share images with their colleagues. And the move to the high bandwidth modalities means that we can push far more patients through the system much faster.
Most of my work is digitally driven. There are hands-on situations when I have to be in the hospital, but most of my work, including on-call work, can be done very effectively from home with proper access. What that allows is instant specialist opinion to my consultant colleagues, wherever they are, using whatever facility they've got, that we can have an instant discussion and an instant patient management plan while the patient is still there in clinic. It gives the consultant the confidence to manage the patient. It gives the patient the best possible care. I don't need somebody to pay me to sit in a hospital for 24 hours a day. It's much easier to provide that from home, and the current facilities with the internet access that we have would allow us to do that.
So from a PSBA perspective, events like today and engaging with the people who attend is extremely important, because from a PSBA perspective, we're looking to innovate. We're looking to transform our network. We're looking to develop new services, and we simply can't do that without engaging with the people of Wales, the users of the network, because they have the ideas. You know, the new services that we've developed to date, that we're launching in 2017, have all been built in conjunction with public sector workers, public sector users, people who set the strategic direction for organisations. We are interested in engaging with people who are using the PSBA in their day-to-day role within a health board, within a council, or within the police force. Likewise, also, you know, from a strategic point of view, you know, a leader of a council will have an aspiration around what he wants to do with the council in the next 3 to 5 years. The network, the PSBA product, underpins their whole strategy.
For me, for the public sector, it's about how can we deliver services for example, in people's homes with secure access to an intranet. Not been done really before, local authority workers, care workers, service deliverers in the client's home, delivering service securely with secure access to servers, back at base if you like, cutting travel, making that client feel more comfortable, being able to deliver a range of services, not one specific service at a job centre, for example. And that way of mobilising, I think, is a huge opportunity, and one where technology probably already exists. The connectivity is probably there. It's the behaviour, it's the risk management which is stopping that rolling out more quickly. And that's one area I think we can really move forward in very quickly. The public sector in the UK as a whole is aware the status quo is not relevant anymore. We cannot deliver the public services that we have in the past with the money we have in the future. And so the way in which services are delivered has to transform, and that will either be dragged kicking or screaming into a transformation, or it'll be a thoughtful, careful and synergistic transformation where we can look to drive common approaches where we need to, but leave that bespoke flexibility at a lower level, if you like, or for particular geographic contexts.
We know that public services are going through a huge amount of change. We know they're going to have to go through significantly more change because of increasing levels of population, increasing demand for services, and of course austerity is still to fully play through, and that requires thinking differently about services, and absolutely it requires working together, it requires a different relationship with the citizen as well. And actually digital plays such a huge role in every facet of our lives. Everybody's got a smartphone. Most people have access to the internet at home, and actually the workforce is becoming much more tech savvy as well. Everyone's using technology as part of their social lives. We're all dipping into Facebook, and it's becoming increasingly important that technology actually isn't a barrier in the workplace, that the sort of level of quality of service and the sort of usability of applications pervades into the workplace, and not just in terms of people and what they do at home. So the PSBA actually is a huge mechanism by which we can reduce some of those barriers, whereby we can facilitate access to systems and services cross organisation, and not just constrain people to their own network or their own systems, which is really fundamentally vital when we've got this new breed of innovators coming into the public sector that want to do different, that want to join things up in a different way, and that want to really focus on the needs and the outcomes for citizens. And here in Wales, we've got that leading position in so much as the PSBA exists. Over 4,500 premises, universities, hospitals, GP surgeries, schools, all connected by a common network. Well, actually, we think that's the foundation and the backbone for digital transformation for the nation.